It's a beautifully symmetrical phrase. Psalm 19 verse 1, the heavens declare the glory of God. Now, the first 5 syllables perfectly mirror the last 5. That's kind of the way Hebrew poetry works as well, even though the same syllable stresses wouldn't be the same in the Hebrew. But Hebrew poetry works by parallelism. The whole of Psalm 19's first verse goes like this: the heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands. Do you hear the parallels? Heaven and the skies declare and proclaim God's glory and God's work. The second half of the verse answers the first half of the verse, and it's a good guess that the author, King David, wrote this in the form of a call and response for public worship. So maybe a priest or a Levite or a chorister would say the first line, and then the rest of the people would say the second line. That's how many of the Psalms work. They are composed for corporate worship, which, just as an aside, is interesting about the book of Psalms, because so often we think of the book of Psalms as existing for my own personal private benefit, me and the prayer closet just by myself. And actually, the Psalms are written to be performed corporately. Christianity really is a team sport. But what about the meaning of these words? The heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands. What's it saying? It's saying that creation is saying something. Verse 2, day after day, the heavens pour forth speech, night after night, they reveal knowledge. According to David, we live in an all-embracing and inescapable sermon. Creation preaches. In particular, David points to the heavenly body, the heavenly bodies, the heavens, the skies, and later on he will draw our attention to the sun. And he says that all that stuff above us has a message for us. Now, what do you think about astrology? Now, our knee-jerk reaction is to think, oh, I couldn't be doing with all of that, tabloid nonsense with the phone numbers that you've got to dial, the toll numbers and all that sort of stuff. Well, no, that stuff is not at all godly or good. But what about true astrology? You see, the word astrology means the word of the stars. And according to the Bible, the stars do have a message for us. And Psalm 19 is confronting us with that message. The difference is, in the Bible, what the stars are saying has nothing to do with whether I'll be lucky in love this week or whether I'll meet a tall, dark stranger or something like that. In the Bible, the heavens are interested in the glory of God. That's what the stars are saying. And what is the glory of God according to Psalm 19? Well, David gives us a concrete example. Verse 5, it's like a bridegroom, the sun rather. The sun is like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber like a champion, rejoicing to run his course. It rises at one end of the heavens and makes its circuit to the other. Nothing is deprived of its warmth. So here's how the glory of God is proclaimed in the sun. That's one example. The sun is like a champion, like a bridegroom. And of course, if you read on to Psalm 45, you'll read about the champion bridegroom who is Christ. And then he says that this champion bridegroom makes a journey from east to west. Which is interesting that in the Bible, actually, the one who makes a journey from east to west is the high priest. From estrangement from God into the Holy of Holies in the West. It's the high priest, the great high priest, who brings us into God's presence, and the sun is the light of life and brings warmth and vitality to all of creation. And so the sun proclaims the glory of God, because the sun proclaims the champion, bridegroom, high priest, light of the world who brings life to all creation. Creation proclaims Christ, who is the bright radiance of the Father's glory, Hebrews chapter 1 verse 3, who shines and brings warmth and life to the wicked and to the righteous alike. He is this gracious champion bridegroom. This is what the heavens are saying day after day. This is the speech that they are proclaiming. The creation is a gigantic evangelistic sermon. And actually, the whole of the Psalms and the whole of creation is preaching the same thing. It's preaching about the Christ, the great high priest, the champion, the bridegroom, the light of the world. The trouble is, we don't see that. The trouble is, when I look at creation, I just see a whole bunch of stuff going round and around and around. I don't see that. What's my problem? My problem is verse 7. It's the law of the Lord, or the Torah of the Lord, that refreshes the soul, or that converts the soul. And the rest of the psalm from verse 7 goes on to say it's actually the Word of God that interprets for us everything that's out there in creation. John Calvin said that the Scriptures are like spectacles that you sort of see the world through. Without the spectacles, you can't see it, but with the spectacles, you see what creation is always saying. And you know what it's always saying? It's always talking about the glory of God. Wonder what you think of when you think of the glory of God. When you look up into the heavens, do you just see vastness? Do you just see empty blackness up there in space? Do you just see naked power writ large? Do you just see stars in mechanical motion? Or do you see the glory of the radiant bridegroom, whose greatest joy is to bring light and life to the world? Psalm 19 tells us the truth. We live in a gospel world. We live in a gospel world that is proclaiming a gospel God. The glory of God is Christ, our radiant bridegroom. And all of creation speaks of His glory. As the old song goes, Jesus is Lord. Creation's voice proclaims it.